Listen to this carefully because this is not fiction, this is not a creepypasta, this is a real experience and it happened in a place people hike every day. What you are about to hear builds slowly and once it starts, it does not let go. Incredibly strange experience in Little Cottonwood Canyon, Utah. I have camped a lot in my life. In fact, I have camped alone. I have camped alone in Big Cottonwood Canyon. I have had strange experiences camping and hiking before, but nothing like this one, not in. This spot location was near the top of Little Cottonwood Canyon at or near Cecret Lake. It is a beautiful location. However, the experiences that I, my sister, my friends, and what I recently found out was other Redditors have had there are very strange and all in that same canyon. The way it started was this: he was at home and I got a text that my friends were going to hike up to a place in Little Cottonwood called Cecret Lake. I had never been there before. I was busy, so I told them I would meet them up there. I started driving up shortly after they left. We parked and began hiking. It was about an hour until sundown, which I should have been more cautious of before setting off on the trail alone, but I was sure that I would catch them somewhere along the trail because I am a fast hiker. At the very least, I would catch them at the lake itself. He started hiking. There were maybe a handful of other hikers in the beginning, but then it was just me alone on this trail and it began to set in. How long this trail actually was. He later found out that I had parked further down the mountain than I needed to, meaning I had to hike an extra half mile or so. I noticed the sun getting lower in the sky, but I thought if I could just hurry, I would catch up with them. He was texting them, getting updates on their location, but service was spotty, so I would get a text here and there. I told them roughly where I was and that I was hurrying up. My sister told me that they were almost to the lake, so I began jogging it. Then as I saw the sun dipping closer to the mountains, I started jogging faster, and then it finally hit me that my phone had gone from 30% battery to 20% to 15% very quickly, which happens when it is cold. I was listening to YouTube videos on my phone as I was hiking, but I turned YouTube off to preserve battery. Up to this point, everything is still normal, but as I got higher up the trail, I started getting this ominous feeling that I have never felt before. And this is the reason I am telling this story. It was this deep sinking feeling of feeling completely alone. As I know this might sound obvious because I was alone in the forest, but I have been alone in the forest many times. This was different. This feeling was not just a feeling of being alone on this trail. It felt like I was alone on the mountain, which then progressed to feeling like I was completely alone in the whole country. Then it felt like I was the only man on earth. I kept telling myself that this feeling was just my brain panicking because I was alone on this trail and the sun was going down, but not that is not in me. I am not someone who panics in these situations. I have been in them so many times, but this feeling would not go away. It began to get more intense with every passing second. It felt like not only was I the only man on earth, but it felt as if I had entered some strange void. It felt almost like I was on earth before humans had ever existed, like I was stuck on this planet with no animal life at all, or at least no intelligent life in the wind. Something about the wine felt so oppressive. I felt ominous. Something about the wine felt like this eerie messenger, like it was this dead omen breeze that was there reminding me of how lifeless this void was. He pulled my phone out of my pocket to try to send another text to my sister, and it was dead, which freaked me out even more. It was also starting to get cold and I was in nothing but a t-shirt, and the dusk was starting to glow blue, reminding me how much light I was quickly losing. He tried pressing the power button to turn on my finito, maybe get a call out to my sister, and luckily it turned on. It was at around 2%. He clicked her contact and called her. It rang and rang, but She did not pick up. He then opened up my texts and saw a message from her that she had sent. It was a picture. It was a picture of my friend that was up there with her, was sitting on a rock looking out on the canyon smiling, and there was just something about the picture that felt off. It felt like it was coming from so far away, so far away, like it was almost from another planet or another dimension that I was millions of miles from. So I began sprinting up the trail looking at that picture, hoping to memorize that spot so I could find them. I finally got to the top of the trail and the sun had dipped below the mountain sand. I could see the lake. I was frantically looking around for them, but no one was there. I got freaked out when I noticed that I could see the stars reflecting off the lake while up near the lake itself. This void feeling was so incredibly intense. I felt like I was on a lifeless other planet, or like I was on Earth before any human evolved, and that I was millions of years away from the first human to ever walk this planet. He scanned the whole lake. I could not see them anywhere. I looked back at the picture she had sent me and I could not find those rocks anywhere. There was something about that picture of my friend that felt so disturbing. It felt so distant, almost as if it was like or something like, imagine frantically calling your friend and instead of them answering you get their voicemail, but the voice does not quite sound like them. After that I began yelling my sister and friend's names and I heard nothing. Then I began screaming their names, running around the lake trying to spot them. After every scream there was nothing, no response. No, I kinda think that is when I decided to barely turned around and started running down the trail back to my car, hoping to get there before the dusk. Light was completely gone. My phone was completely dead now. I had no light. He booked it down the trail. Eventually it was pitch black and I was slowly feeling every step, making sure I did not twist my ankle, and luckily halfway down the trail he ended up finding the muck livet. That feeling stayed with Menerator even after they were found. The place did not let. It was a few months later that same friend group and I decided to go camping. He chose to go up in that same spot since it was one that we all knew, but I remember that as soon as we arrived up to that lake, Ray got slammed with that same alone feeling that I am the first person, the only person on earth feeling, which was strange because this time I was with a group of friends, so it could not be explained away by the fact that I was physically alone. I also felt kind of sick all night and the wind tormented me all night. It was not very windy at all. No one would describe it as a particularly windy night. It was just this very slight breeze that I could hear on my tent, just this very soft breeze. Most people would describe it as calm, as relaxing, but it did not matter how calm it was. It tormented me. I cannot describe how, but it did. Every time I heard that slight breeze hit my tent, it caused me this horrible feeling, this ominous, oppressive feeling, this overwhelming presence that was pressing down on me all over every small flap of my tent's rain fly. It was like this feeling of this ominous void was showing itself to me through the wind. It felt otherworldly. Do not know if that even describes it well enough. It was not until the morning that my sister conveyed to me that she had the exact same experience at the entire camping trip. She told me that as soon as we set up our tent, she felt horrible anxiety and a sick feeling. She said that she felt like she was the only person on earth. He recently texted her about it, and this is how she described it over our text. Remember that camping spot that makes you feel like you are the only human on earth? Me sister, yes, it was one of the worst types of bad I have ever felt, cause when you feel sick or scared you can picture the warmth of home, your childhood of, and strangers feel comforting of it. Though they are strangers, they are still people, but not that type, and not when it is just you. I recently found a Reddit post on this same subreddit that described a bizarre experience in Little Cottonwood Canyon. It is not exactly the same, but it has some similarities. One particular aspect I noticed from this Redditor was how they meandered My sister all described the wind as being a big part of the strange feeling of it. There is one thing that the Redditor stated made me feel so small, and then suddenly we get blasted with this force of wind so hard it woke all the other guys up here. Is the Reddit post that talks about their strange experience. It is called creepy_occurrence_and_you. And here is how my sister described the wind. Man, my friends decided to do a short backpacking trip up a popular canyon and hike to a spot that is near a ski resort, so it is pretty high up. The end of the trail destination was a lake getting close to the top of the mountain, and there was a steep hill off to the left we decided to camp at since it would be out of the way of hikers in the morning, but still close enough to make trips to the lake. Fresh mountain water to fill our water filter bags to drink. He was the only girl. Two of the guys, my brothers, and the other two guys were our friends. And I have done a lot of hiking and a lot of camping, but not backpacking, and I was not used to the crazy heavy bag full of all my gear. He had done this hike to the lake before in July a few years ago, and remember it being pretty steep towards the end, but it was way different with this 30-pound pack. Oni was 20 at the time and had like no muscle, and this time it was late August outside the canyon. It was still somewhat warm, but we knew it would get super cold at night up there. Ray had Goodyear Sub-Zero sleeping bag, a sleeping pad too. Also help insulate against the cold, all stuff I had used before we left later in the day than we hoped, but it was only a 20-minute drive up the canyon to the trail head and about 45 minutes of hiking, so we were not too worried about it. Hike was super pretty, a decent amount of incline the whole way, but lots of pretty grassy fields, then parts in the trees at camp. At that time it was the perfect weather, no jacket, still some sun that was warm, plus all the cardio. By the time we got to the end of the trail, got to the lake, you could see the sun was starting to go down, but not sunset yet, and that is when we got some water, then looked around and picked literally the steepest hill I have ever climbed to hike to the top of with all our gear and set up our camp before it got dark again. I have hiked a bunch and camped a bunch, but I had never done winter camping, and my brother, who had done a lot of camping in winter, snow, etc., told me what to do, what to bring it, so I was trying to get my tent up and all my stuff out before the sun went down, because you could feel it was starting to get colder the more the sun went down. I do not know what the altitude of the ski resort is, but it is a part of the Rocky Mountains so pretty high up already and full of pine trees. To give an idea how high we were at the lake, there were still trees, but at the top of that hill there was only a small cluster of super tall but branchy trees, then literally up the slope a bit more, and it was all rock because it was the top of that mountain peak, and literally no trees or anything anywhere, which looked weird because there was a bunch not far below the end. Guessing it was above the alpine line at that point because there were just zero. A bunch of rock and some patches from snow. At some point it had incredible views down the mountain. I do not know how to describe it because it is not like we were on top of MT Everest or something, just the whole resort is at the top of the mountains in that area, but there are other peaks that go higher still, though. We were super high up and the sun was going down, and I was not expecting the temperature dropping that fast and that cold. Just with the sun lowering, views were awesome, but there was a weird empty vibe up there, and it was not because all the day hikers were gone. It just felt absent, like even the sky went up to the rocky area at one point by myself, and it felt eerie, like in a lone way, even though everyone was like 100 feet from me by the tents below. But it just felt very alien. Even picturing it now gives me a weird feeling. The gray sky that is getting darker, and just up there, I do not know why it felt that way, because literally there was an entire resort below us that you could see some buildings open if you looked the other direction. The entire mountainside was full of cabins, so it is not like we were in the middle of nowhere at all. It is literally a super popular hike, but it just felt far not long after The sun went down and it got cold, like coldy knew it would get cold, but being late August, no snow around, recent snow, I did not realize it would be that freezing, especially on top of that hill, so the wind was a bit strong. Gary put on my big coat and all my layers, but it was still biting through. This is where it got weird. Fast forward maybe an hour and a half and everyone is freezing, but we are fine hanging out in the tent and it is dark, but we are happy and laughing and talking. Got our food to cook dinner and went to the outside of my brother's tent because he had his backpacking stove already set up. At that point I was not feeling well. I was freezing, but I was not like feeling bad physically necessarily, but something was so off. No matter how many layers I put on, it is like nothing was working, which I still do not understand because it could not have gotten below 35 degrees F and my clothes were totally adequate for this temperature, around the mid to low 40s, and I felt deeply uncomfortable. Darkness did not scare me because I knew how populated the area not far from us was, but there was something about being at the top of that mountain area, the wind blowing and being freezing, that felt scary in a way. Even though I was not scared of anything, if that makes sense, it was more of a vibe. I do not know, it would have made more sense if we were in the middle of nowhere, no buildings, people, or anything for miles, but we were not yet. It felt that way again. I do not know why, but every footstep from the outside of my tent to my brother's 20 feet from ours felt like it took a massive amount of energy, not just physically, but like mentally too, which still does not make sense. I was post-backpacking tired, like it did not feel like physical exertion, but instead this dread with every step, like there was no relief anywhere. Relief from what I do not know, but relief of some kind. It might not sound weird reading, but it still confuses me so much where that feeling was coming from. Even pulling out my dry freezer, backpacking food from my back felt like the biggest emotionally tasking thing in the world. Again, if I was tired from the hike, then laying down in my cozy sleeping bag would have helped a bit. It did not. It was not that. Over at his two-person tiny tent, I stood outside feeling like my body and soul was crushing, and saw he had little fairy lights strung around the inside of his tent, and they were the warm tone, which I remember because that warmth stood out so much, even like on an emotional level, to literally everything around and the vibe around us too. We wanted to be in that tent so badly and get out of whatever feeling the outside had, like I desperately wanted to get in, which was so weird, but it looked so safe and warm, and despite not being far from civilization at all, it felt like we were in the middle of absolutely nowhere. I do not know how to describe it because it was not just the normal, uncomfortable feeling you might have being that far from anything. It felt so far and cold from warmth and humans, and like an emotional or psychological level, that seeing those warm string lights had that much of an impact on me. It only got worse. We all ate outside the tent in that freezing cold, and despite me should have being warm, I still felt that dread and like I was dying inside or something. Me friends and brothers were laughing and joking around, totally normal, but I felt so far from those feelings. Walked back to my tent once again felt like this absolute trek, and I got inside feeling still there and decided to just go to sleep to at least get out of this feeling. It was dark and late anyways. The other three in my tent stayed up a bit, still laughing and talking, and I laid in my bag on one side of the tent by its wall and felt cold to my bones. It still does not make sense. This was a down sub-zero sleeping bag meant to withstand way colder temperatures, meaning that I should have still been comfortable and warm that night, but no, I mean I even had my full coat on, 2 layers, and laid in that bag, and there was no warmth, nothing. You still have that far away alone feeling, that exhausted dread feeling, and I am freezing, which makes no sense. I called my brother who had done seriously so many winter, even a few blizzard campouts to see what I was doing wrong, and even he could not figure it out. Coat on, sleeping bag and my sleeping mat giving me distance from the ground. He dozed off at some point, the wind still going, but woke up at around 1 a.m. with everyone else fully asleep, and that is when the entirety of this feeling that night hit me. Inexplainably, I felt so far from any warmth, civilization, and comfort, as if I was the only human in those mountains. Despite my friends next to me and seeing the lights of the cozy cabins on the other mountainside across, he felt exhausted on like a soul level, but could not fall back asleep. He was the only person awake and aware on the top of that mountain, with the cold wind blowing outside and pure darkness all around. In all of my camping trips, I have never had that alone feeling, the darkness, feeling that dark, if that makes sense, but it was so intense. I laid there freezing to my core for the next 2 hours, unable to do anything but think. He kept thinking of the people in the city outside the canyon, in their warm homes, their warm lamps like the golden color ones lighting up their living rooms, the heater on us, and scenes like that. It sounds so freaking weird, but I literally was like aching for humanity on that darker feeling, darkness, freezing, desolate feeling. Hill, it sounds so dramatic, as if I was stranded in the middle of nowhere or something, but that is why it makes no sense at all. I have never experienced anything like this, nor had anxiety or anything like this. None of it made sense. Hill there was like truly imposing, like impending feeling of desolate loneliness and coldness all around. And inside too, I have been cold, I have been tired, I have camped in further place, but every night in my sleeping bag around whoever I am with, I have had a sort of warmth inside, that kind of like that cozy feeling when it is snowing out and you are in your bed, but it was like that feeling was violently gone. I do not know if that makes sense, and the wind was just blowing and blowing outside. At some points I would just look in my tent, eyes open, and its walls felt so void of any sort of light or warmth. It was so weird, like they were the coldest gray shadow, that feeling that you just kind of always have with you, like the feeling that is just normal. Felt like the most emotionally warm feeling I could imagine, but it was not there laying there. I started to just imagine these weird scenes, I guess, with all those vibes I was feeling or something. With my eyes closed, I got hit with this idea of being the only human on the planet, but in a very specific way, like if you happen to spontaneously spawn by yourself on a peopleless planet with no knowledge or memories of anyone or anything else, yet somehow still being you. And picturing that, it sounds so funny, but I thought of how comforting the ideas of cities were, like if I got stranded in the middle of some forest in the Yukon with this truly alone, desolate feeling I was feeling now. There is something so comforting about the ideas of cities. He thought of people in Tokyo with their lights on doing random things, and all the people and energy of the city just being there, even if I was far away from it. Same with other cities, with that scene I was picturing of being the first or only person on the planet. I thought about how in a different situation, if the apocalypse happened and you were the only person left after everyone was gone, there is something equally comforting as legit ancient Rome existing, even with everyone gone, no one else. The fact that there was people and energy movement, humanity would be so much relief against this specific feeling. But picturing being the first, I just kept ruminating, imagining, feeling what I would be like with none of that having happened, just using a cold and desolate feeling that the idea of a civilization thousands of years ago would bring some relief to that. One part over and over in my head of that first person scene was standing in this field that was not quite flat but had a slow long incline to a sort of hill that had very, very sparse pine trees just sitting there, the sky being gray and there being nothing else. And the part that felt the most intense was the wind, not even strong wind or a storm, but a breeze that is not super cold, but just cold enough to be uncomfortable, hitting you with no protection Walls tense anything. There was something about the just cold enough light breeze almost blowing in a completely empty world that was one of the scariest things I had thought of. Booty then thought about how being the first or only person you would not have any knowledge of building, or how wind and coldness even worked. He pictured somehow making walls out of something and placing them around you, but that weird gentle wind would be completely unhindered by them and reach you with that coldness through the ceilingless top above you. I would have no concept of fire, how it rises or fills a room, absolutely nothing except what that cold gentle wind feels like on your skin, and you do not like it. It does not feel good, but you do not even have thoughts of what would remedy that, because no human has done anything yet. It is just you and nothing else on that planet in the universe. Reading it now, I am sure it will not make sense of it, with that almost violent, alone, desolate feeling, completely void of humanity. It was one of the scariest feelings I had ever hated. It would not go away. That scene I was picturing had a really close feeling or vibe to the hill we were on, the same feeling I get when I picture the sky when the sun was starting to set, but not all the way yet. I have no idea why, but it legitimately felt like that hilltop was separate from the rest of the planet or something. I do not even know best. It makes no sense that a campsite that literally overlooks a ski resort and many cabins would feel so desolate, but that energy was so strong that literally just seemed to get stronger and stronger as time went on, that it confuses me how such a specific vibe just like permeated every inch of that place. Even when I look at the pictures from that camping trip, something seems distant about them, even though a lot of them include my friends, brothers, me smiling, doing stuff, laughing, and doing happy light things, and nothing still seems off even in the image, especially this one picture that I took the next day. That is just my tent, my brother's tent, a little further back, and the back of the mountaintop, and the sun in the sky. It feels so still, lifeless, like humanity has not touched it or something. And the reason I say it like that is because with that scene that would not leave my mind the night before, it was so aggressively void of any touch of humanity that I do not know. It is like you could feel its absence. It probably sounds dramatic, but I do not know how else to describe. I do not know if I would have thought about what a completely alone, lifeless planet, never having been even perceived by humans, would truly feel like. But with that scene, it was not just a passive, lifeless feeling, but a literal, aching, imposing, truly desolate feeling, which is why even the concept of being the only person on Earth but just Rome, existing thousands of years ago, Tokyo, New York, the civilizations literally so alive with people having existed even though gone, would bring comfort in that situation. Do not know. It probably does not make any sense and sounds dramatic, but it is such a specific and difficult feeling, energy to explain that I do not know how else to cringe. But after all of that, I literally just thought about how much I love human show. There is just automatically life in everyone and everything. How I love our civilization, cities, how humanity creates a warm energy, a warm vibe by literally going around doing stuff, anything. It's just like how physical heat is molecules moving around faster, and just love the warmth of humans that is just automatically there by just existing somehow. If that makes sense. I even pictured someone so obnoxious and annoying, but the idea was still just as comforting because there is warmth and humanity. That person would have just by existing, and someone being annoying or rude just seemed light and funny because there is so much humanity and like life in annoying someone, and it is not even in the cliche or cheesy way, but like a literal just damn, humans and humanity is just so much warmth and energy, literally like molecules producing heat because they are moving around faster, like there is just life and movement and so much with humanity and energy. It's the most comforting home-like familiar feeling, especially when comparing it to something or somewhere completely detached from everything, and for some reason that I do not know why, that top of the hill felt off and cut off from everything, and there was this tangible energy of alone that was one of, if not the weirdest things I have ever experienced, especially on such an intense physical, emotional, and energy like. If you ask me, this story is not just about a weird hike or a strange night. It is about a place that seems to have its own energy, a place that makes people feel something the mind cannot explain, and the fact that multiple people, including the sister, including the other Reddit post, all describe the same oppressive wind. That is the part that makes it hard to dismiss, because it is not one person, it is not one moment, it is a pattern, and patterns are not always coincidental. My opinion is something in that canyon, something about that specific spot interacts with people, and it is not friendly. Maybe it is a natural phenomenon, maybe it is something else, but whatever it is real enough to leave a mark, and it is real enough to make you feel like you are the only human left on Earth. Now I want to ask you, do you think this is a natural explanation or something more supernatural? And if you were there, would you go back knowing what you know now?